whatever you like.
Yeah, no, that's all good. We're
I'm
going
just
to
gonna
continue.
read it myself then.
Oh, I see. I was
Oh.
totally muted. I was.
So, yeah, I thought, oh well, I guess Mackie's doing the show
By himself now.
I'll do your voice. And then I said,
you know, it's good. Then
so do you want to do the questions or the answers?
Okay, so are we just going to take off where we were?
Well, I think so.
Yeah,
we can wind back. Up to you.
Oh no, I think it's okay because I marked where we were last time, so I'm happy to do the questions.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. And this might be a good time to talk about what the mood was on the Nimitz after all of this.
Once I landed, I saw one of my buddies from my sister squadron. He said, "Hey, did you see something out there too?" in a very jokey manner. And I was like, "Actually, Emperor, because I know you want to make fun of me, I got it here on video." Although I didn't say Emperor. I said the actual term, and you can imagine what Emperor means. He's a good friend of mine, so it was in jest. We popped the tapes into the playback machine. I'm like, "Here, this is where it is." Those little video cuts in a podcast interview earlier this year, Sean Cahill, Princeton's chief master at arms, recalled that the name of this shortened FLIR1 video, the only version that the public has seen, was named 14 November _ condensed or something like that. As Cahill told the podcast's host, Alejandro Rojas, the video file was shared widely by crew members of the Nimitz and the Princeton using the carrier group's low bandwidth circa 2004 Secret Internet Protocol Router Network, SERPNet, before much later being published by the New York Times in December 2017. That you see of my FLIR or FLIR recording were taken at the Intelligence Center. What they do with it from there, I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to deal with. When I was still in my flight gear, so probably within about 20 minutes or so, I spoke to someone that I assume was from NORAD. I described it exactly as I just told you. I didn't get debriefed. The interesting thing was, normally, if you see something out in the middle of the ocean that's a test project, we would get debriefed on it, one-on-one, in a dark room. Whether it's from the folks at Edwards test site, since the end of World War II, Edwards Air Force Base has been one of the premier testing sites for a new U.S. military aircraft, and later home to NASA's Armstrong Flight Research Center for the testing of advanced spacecraft. Naturally, Edwards has been a perennial subject of American UFO lore, including an extended October 7, 1965 sighting in which base personnel struggled for over 5 hours to identify a series of mystery objects invading their airspace. Some fun, less intuitive trivia: the base also has its own folklore about a desert Bigfoot creature called the Yucca Man, or something like that anyway. Hey, yes, we were testing a project. This is what you saw. Without going into great detail, it will be like, yes, this is project something Squad. And basically, this is what you saw. Don't talk about it. So that's the debrief. Sorry, that's Mackie talking. That's the debrief he would have expected but didn't get. That never happened, which leads me to think that it was not a government project. A former fighter pilot currently working with the Tailhook Association, who spoke on condition of anonymity, corroborated this idea that the lack of a formal debrief for Underwood describing a top-secret aircraft would be suggestive of something more unusual than a classified test flight program.
Or at least not one.
Not one that they wanted to give any acknowledgement of. And you know, I've got top secret clearance with a ton of special project clearances. So it's not like I wasn't, that I wasn't clear to know. But as I'm sure you found in your research, to have clearance to know something, you have to have both the clearance that it's elevated to, and you have to have the need to know it. And clearly, whatever it was, if it was a government project, I did not need to know.
Yeah, understood. Here's something I'm curious about. Because of this NORAD aspect, did it come up that this telephone debriefing was maybe involved with something called Operations Event Incident Report, or NORAD's, or OPREP. That's right. 3. Reporting system. Documents made public via the Freedom of Information Act, alongside other government documents, including Air Force Instruction 10206, Operating Reporting, AFI 10206, published by the Secretary of the United States Air Force, the SEC-USAF, on October 15th, 2008, have indicated that a US military-wide secured reporting channel dubbed OPREP 3 for Operational Reporting Category 3 Event Incidents have become a primary means of delivering real-time information on UFO incidents up the national security chain of the command, from the service members tracking the object up through to the White House. Documents released via FOIA have shown that OPREP 3 channel used to deliver information about a spate of October 30th, 1975 UFO events at Wurtsmith Air Force Base in Michigan and overlapping sightings at Loring Air Force Base in Maine, among others.
Honestly, Matt, I have no idea. Like, what level up to who I was talking to? I just wanted to answer them. I was just basically handed a telephone and said, hey, answer these questions.
Fair enough. So between talking to the NORAD guy and Fravor going public, there's a several year period where this is just like a thing that just happened in your life. Did it come up very often at all?
There would be associations. I would be sitting at lunch 5 years later with some of my colleagues. Rumors tend to have legs. Hey, you were out in the Nimitz in 2004. Someone told me about some alien spacecraft. And I'm like, well, the video that you see is my video. And no, I've never said that this is what I think it was or speculate as to what I think it was. That's not my job. But I saw something. And it was also seen via eyeballs by both my commanding officer, Dave Fravor, and the Marine Corps Hornet Squadron commanding officer who was out there as well.
When did you find out Fravor was going to go public? Did a lot of people approach you during that reporting or after?
It's funny. Seeing your boss's name and face on the news, given what he was putting out there, obviously our encounter happened in 2004. So a while back. But everything that Dave has put out there in the interviews is absolutely 100% exactly what happened on that day. And we're still good friends to this day. So I started texting him. We had about a 2-hour-long phone call. And I'd be like, dude, what made this pop up? Where was this 12, 14 years ago? Now it's 15 years ago. And I guess that was when the Pentagon released whatever project they called it. I can't even remember it.
ATIP.
Yeah, ATIP. Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Ostensibly ran from 2007 to 2012 with a budget of about $22 million. It was preceded by and may have overlapped with another Defense Intelligence Agency program dubbed Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Applications Program, AWSAP, with a wider and weirder purview that included dark energy and the manipulation of extra dimensions. In October 2017, New York Times reporter Ralph Blumenthal and longtime UFO researcher Leslie Kean met with a former employee of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, USDI, Luis Elizondo, who had been involved with ATIP. And depending on which reporters and low-level Pentagon spokespeople you care to trust, may have led the program. Working with several other individuals from the US military and intelligence world, and however improbably with Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonge, Elizondo and the Times brought news of ATIP and with it David Fravor's account of the Tic Tac to the public that December. The extent of the Pentagon's official involvement declassifying this material is unfortunately still one of the more frustrating, unresolved, and contentious aspects of this story 2 years later.
Mm-hmm. Did the New York Times reach out to you, ask for your background, just to confirm anything?
No.
Interesting.
Not that I really care. At no point did I want to speculate as to what I thought this thing was, or be associated with, alien beings and alien aircraft and all that stuff. I'm like, no, I didn't want to be part of that community. It's just what we call a UFO. I couldn't identify it. It was flying, and it was an object. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I let the nerds do the math on what it was likely to be. I just happened to be the person that brought back the video.
Yeah. So this original story identified the man who quoted in the military's report as reporting that the objects exhibited ballistic missile characteristics as Kevin Day. The identity of this man has not yet been publicly reported. We regret the error. That's a retraction if I've ever seen one.
The interesting thing here is we've looked at the Nimitz event now from almost all the eyewitnesses, and in fact, there's a show called UFO Witness out on TV right now, which I urge you to watch. It's really interesting, and they interviewed the radar operator on that show that was on duty on the Nimitz that day.
I saw the 60 Minutes where they had the other female pilot as well.
Yes, and he said that people came in and they took it all away the next day. Right? They came in and just took it all. It was all taken. Thank you very much.
Now that wasn't consistent with David Fravor.
No,
who said that he wasn't aware that it had been taken away because it was there when he went and saw it.
Yeah, that's right. So, but as the case may be, clearly the video circulated in the Navy, community for some time, over that network. So
someone had made a copy of it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's once it's out there in the world, it's out there forever. But it was declassified. It was acknowledged as being real, and it pretty much put an end to any need to justify the research into UFOs. UFOs are a real thing. Now, we're not saying they're this, we're not saying they're that, we're not saying something else either, but they are simply that. Unidentified, flying, or submerged objects. UFOs, which are now euphemistically called UAPs, or unidentified aerial phenomena. Though, do I think they're natural phenomena? I honestly don't think they're natural. I think there's this guiding intelligence maybe piloting this craft or some such, but I don't think they're natural objects. It's just the behavior is just too strange in many ways, and also too deliberate in other aspects. So it's really interesting conundrum we're in. Again, I don't know what it is or what it could be. I mean, Dave and I, we've got our ideas, but I'm sure everybody out listening to this also has an idea, or at least some kind of preferred theory as to what these things might be. And there might be different things as well. Make no mistake, right? They might not be all the same thing, because some sightings are different from others. So it's a really I'm just glad, Dave, that we have come to a point where the phenomenon is acknowledged. Here it is. Yes, it is really something we don't know. Thank you. I mean, it does vindicate some of the things we do, you and I think, and other researchers or other people that are involved in this particular field. Because while we don't really need validation from the mainstream, it is nice to see that the ideas we constantly espouse on the show, and the points we make and the things we report are, even if it takes a bit of time, are eventually found to be, there's something here. There's something in this. It takes away the cookiness of the situation, right? For me, at least. I find it gratifying that it happens,
Oh, yeah. So, Becky, there's more to this than meets the eye. There's an ancient beginning where this has been recorded from a long, long time ago.
Yeah, this is something that we've discussed extensively in the Igigi show cycle. When I talked about the giants, and this is the Atrahasis epic. The Atrahasis is the Akkadian Babylonian epic of the Great Flood, sent by the gods to destroy human life. Only the good man Atrahasis, and his name translates as exceedingly wise, was warned of the impending deluge by the god Enki, also known as Ea, and is one of the Anunnaki, by the way, who instructed him to build an ark to save himself. Atrahasis heeded the words of the god, loaded 2 of every kind of animal into the ark, and so preserved life on Earth. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because that is what the Bible used as source material for its own flood myth. Much less detailed, though. Right?
What are the lions going to eat?
What are the lions going to eat? Yeah, well, you don't want to be bunkered next to them. Hey, what happened to the anticlopes? What anticlopes? That's exactly right.
That's funny.
Now, this was
there's a guy with the clipboard they're unloading. Where are all the anticlopes? Just crosses it off, and when you zoom in, there's a whole bunch of them crossed off.
I like that. That's a great sketch. I like it. I love it. Now, this epic was written down, mind you, in the 17th century before the Common Era, which makes it about 4,000 years ago. Okay, now it was written down then, and it can be dated by the colophon to the reign of the Babylonian king Hammurabi's great grandson Amisaduqa, who reigned from 1646 before the Common Era, though the tale itself is considered much older, passed down through oral transmission. The Sumerian flood story, known as the Eridu Genesis, which tells the same story, is certainly older, composed about 4,500 years ago. And Tablet 11 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which also relates the tale of the Great Flood, is even older than that. The Epic of Gilgamesh was written about 4,500 years ago, but the Sumerian flood story it relates is older, passed down orally until it appeared in writing. While the story itself concerns a flood of universal proportions, even scaring the gods who unleashed it, most scholars recognize that it was probably inspired by a local event, flooding caused by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers overflowing their banks. Wrong answer. I'm sorry. Because Dave and I have gone through some length in our flood myth show cycle to show that this flood myth is a global phenomenon.
It happens in every country on the planet. Every people's, in the world, all have around about the same ancient period of time, a story about the flood.
Correct.
And it's not localized just to the Euphrates River. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just happened there. Nowhere else. It was like rain or something.
Rain.
Yeah.
It's maybe the mud. It was a bit of mud and rain. Yeah. So yeah, but the thing is, it's really interesting, and we've come across this, Dave, in pretty much everything we've presented. There's this real unwillingness of mainstream science, history, archaeology, to make leaps and to investigate things that go against the accepted and mainstream dogma. And I understand it from a personal point of view. People have no interest in rocking the boat because that's hard to do, and it means you probably don't get any more jobs. But it doesn't help science.
I mean, if you had the Japan Airlines freighter guy, pilot, he got fired for revealing what he knew, what he saw. Right? It's not an advantage to you to go, hey, guess what? I'm a trained observer, and I found something that didn't match anything.
Yeah. Right,
just letting you know. Oh, right, you're crazy. You can no longer fly. Thank you very much.
That's it. But you know what? This kind of attitude is not that old. So we've obviously looked at Michael Kremer's work extensively, and all the out of place artifacts he found in layers of Earth that shouldn't exist, like there should be no intelligent life at that point, etc., etc. We shouldn't find tools, artifacts, let alone evidence of human beings. Yet there it is, and this attitude that these things are unacceptable is really not that old. People were much more accepting, I guess, in days gone by, even as early as you know, as little ago as 150, even 100 years ago. Yes, there was skepticism, sure enough, but it was at least considered, and it made it to the newspaper, right? And people considered it. They went there, they had a look, and you know. But these days, things like that are dismissed out of hand. Any finding that goes against what is accepted as common knowledge, and by the way, this common knowledge, or this accepted mainstream view of the world, is guided, I believe, very strongly, Dave. It is guided by people that want us to sit in the cave and look at the wall. Right? And that's all we have time for. Thank you very much. We don't need to look at anything else, you know. And the best and brightest are snatched up and you know, and given jobs that usually lock them into a certain mode of thinking. In fact, at university, I think I told you the story. I was, I want to say, second year of psych. I don't remember, maybe the first year of psych. And I was writing something, and I was saying, I can't remember what it was, but I was disagreeing with something that one of the
doesn't sound like you, Mickey.
Not at all. That one of the source materials we had to do for assignment was saying. And I said, no, I don't think that's right, because of X, Y, and Z. I had my reasons, right? And
I did the same thing in engineering, yeah.
Yeah, and then my tutor said, oh, well, no, you can't have that opinion yet. I said, what? Well, this is you've been reading second year material. So no, this is wrong. I'm sorry, but you can't have this opinion. What?
Yes.
Really?
You can't have the opinion yet, Mackie.
Yeah.
That's you.
And I was thinking, oh wow, that was my first real insight into how academia actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't like it, but you know, I might have been a bad example, and maybe it was unusual for that to happen. I don't know. It did happen to me. It's neither here nor there, right? But that it did happen, and I do believe there's a knowledge filter, and I do believe there's a deliberate steering of the human knowledge train, if you will, in certain directions and away from others. You know, we've talked about Nikola Tesla at length. We've talked about gravity or anti-gravity research at length. We've talked about other things as well, where the research just seems to just disappear. It's actually interesting. A friend of the show's once worked for the CSIRO, and he was a IT support.
Being careful to say that. Yep.
Yeah. No, but you know, but one day the people working on ground penetrating radar, right, and the next day they were gone, disappeared. We've got a breakthrough. Up the whole
Whooshka, gone,
whisked away. Right. So.
Yep.
Look, it does happen, and ultimately you have to ask yourself, why are we steered a certain direction? Why are we going here rather than there? And why are we not allowed to question these things? And why do we have to accept them as read, as gospel? Right? I mean, if anything, these days we should understand just how little we understand. If you look at the hard sciences, and I'm talking about physics, for example, right? Let's look at physics for a second. You got hard science. I mean, this is mathematics and experimental, physics and testing.
Yep.
Yeah. And you look at quantum physics or quantum mechanics, and you're looking at the general or even the special theory of relativity, and those two don't go together. They're correct in their own right. They're both correct, right? Describing different parts of the same system, right? But describing them in a way that is diametrically opposed, right? So over here we've got describing something. Okay, that's right over here, and over on the other side, you know, there's another description completely different to what's described over here, but it's also correct in its circumstances. And recently I read an article in I can't remember which scientific publication, but it said, is it possible that natural laws or the laws of physics or such are different in different parts of the universe? Is it possible that what we perceive to be, you know, the natural laws are only really applicable to our section of the universe? I'm not talking, you can talk about the multiverse. Forget the multiverse for a second, right? Our universe. So scientists are now wondering, well, do the laws of nature apply only here as we know them, and they're different, you know, I don't know, a billion light years over there? And the answer is we don't know. Some observational effects have led some scientists to believe that might very well be the case, right? So, but we are caught in this quagmire of science that doesn't come to term with itself and doesn't like it to be challenged, right? I mean, there are many. Elizabeth Steen McIntyre, she said, human habitation of the Americas is probably 250,000 years old. Oh, no, bad woman. You're now a florist. And whenever you find people that go against the grain, you see the same kind of consequences. And the funny thing is this, Dave, the same thing happened to Galileo Galilei. In fact, Bruno, his full name escapes me, but there was Bruno, he was a mathematician living in Italy at the time. And he was burned for his troubles.
Yeah.
At the stake. He was killed because he espoused the belief, this was hundreds of years ago, that wasn't in line with the Catholic Church.
Of course.
Right? And they threatened others. Sorry?
Yes, it was the style at the time, Mickey.
It's the style at the time. And it's just, but it hasn't changed. I mean, okay, we don't really burn people at the stake anymore.
And you get deplatformed if you go against the ultimate messaging.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that's murder of a different kind. You can no longer espouse your opinion because you no longer have a voice.
Galileo's house arrest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you say something that the mainstream doesn't like, and the mainstream is doesn't really matter who they are, right? The mainstream is the mainstream, and if you it no longer is you're no longer heard. And the mainstream now is saying, well, now evolution is a thing, and relativity is a thing, and quantum physics is a thing. But by the same token, no, you can't look at ancient human evidence. No, you can't look at ancient civilizations that probably had space-faring capabilities. And no, you can't look at evidence that we're probably cohabiting this planet with civilizations that are still spacefaring in some way or another. And no, you can't look at dimensional travel, because that's crazy anyway, even though there seems to be evidence that there's something like that going on. There seem to exist thin places in this world where things happen that don't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it's an
and
overlap.
This is my segue to the Skinwalker Ranch.
There you go.
I did it. But there are places like that, and Skinwalker Ranch is not alone. I mean, there are many, many, many places in the world where the native people have taboos in place, or this like a no-go zone, or whatever it might be. Yeah, and for good reason. They don't know why or how, but it's definitely something. And now we have ancient epics here, Dave, like the Epic of Atrahasis or the Epic of Gilgamesh or others that talk about things that make perfect sense to you and me today, and not just you and me, but anyone in our cultural environment.
Because we have a context,
Yeah, but they were written down. So they were written down thousands and thousands of years ago. Now they were probably older because they're probably an oral tradition before they were written down. So they may be 10,000, 15, 20,000 years old. And when I say this, no, I'm not. It's not hyperbole, and I'm not speaking out of turn, because if you have something in a rhyming stanza, or you transmit something orally from one person to the next, by having it in a rhyming
the meter
setup,
and the rhyme keeps its integrity.
Absolutely.
It's like a checksum.
Yeah, and we know that was the case with the Vedas. In Nordic mythology, the Vedas were orally relayed generation over generation with no change, because if you change anything, the meter wouldn't work anymore.
That's right.
All right. Am I saying that it's completely unchanged? No, I'm not saying that at all. But the changes would be minimal at best. And I think that's what we're seeing here as well. So once it was written down, of course, then that's pretty much good to go. But when it's translated, I think the problem that we have is oral translation, oral submission through time is pretty accurate. Once you write it down once, that's good. But as soon as you start translating it, you're losing meaning. And that's why the Quran was not allowed to be translated into any other language. You have to learn and read it in Arabic, believe it or not. Because in translation, you lose things. And I know this because I do speak more than one language, and you can never convey the exact meaning of the word or the phrase or the intent into another language. You can come close.
Yeah, word for word close. But when you have an expression Like
Uh-huh.
when I gave the example, Meki, I think one of our other shows, where I took Born in the USA, the song.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when I said the phrase "born in a dead man's town," it means that there's no life there for you growing up in that town. Everyone there is only going to see themselves out. There isn't anything there. So, but if I was trying to change that to another language, because it's an expression and it has a background to the expression, rather than writing the background, you just translate it word for word because you don't understand the background when you're doing a translation, and therefore you end up with a phrase that, once again, born in a town with dead people, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it won't carry the message in born into a town where there's no hope for you, there's nothing there for you. So I think poetically he did a great job writing it for a song, but it doesn't translate. And you can't, there's people who have just YouTubes dedicated to the Google Translate of a song.
Yeah.
Where they actually sing the Google translated version over the song lyrics, over the song. And it's very strange.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
No, but that's a really it's a perfect example of pardon the phrase, Chinese whispers, right?
Yes, I know.
And there's an even more extreme example of where that happened. So in the Bible, in Exodus, it says, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." That's what it says. Exodus 22:18, right? And it's 22:17 in Hebrew. But there's now contention as to what that actually means, because if you look at the actual original words and how it was translated, it instead of witch or witchcraft or sorcerer or anything like that, it seems that the word actually refers to mixers of poison or people that poison other people.
Ah.
Okay, so this is not "thou shalt not suffer a witch to live," but thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live. So all these poor unfortunate women that were
burned at the stake.
Burned at the stake and accused of witchcraft, not of poisoning
her.
people.
She's a witch. How do you know she's a witch? Well, she's dressed like one. They dressed me like this. She turned me into a newt. A newt? I got better.
And yeah, look, I love that. I love that part. But the truth here, so this was a massively consequential mistranslation potentially, or from poisoner to witch, and over time, the more translations come into between, the more and more you will see these things play out and give you. You lose meaning. I mean, if you look at these ancient flood myths, Gilgamesh, Atrahasis, etc., in my opinion, and we're going to share this with our listeners in a second, they're a lot more detailed and rich, and they make a lot more sense, right, than what we have in the Bible. In the Bible, the people were bad, and God decided to kill them all with a flood, except for Noah, because he was a good guy, and we'll spare him. Almost like the child's version of the epic.
So when you hear the words that from the English translation, see how you feel about what it means, and how does it? How can you see how that what the true meaning of what you think, what you believe it sounds like?
Yeah,
because that's what we've been doing every time. Science improves. You go back and read the old text and see how you might have a different opinion about what it means, like flying shields and things.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but in this case, Meki, why don't you start it?
Yeah, let's start. So this was translated by Stephanie Daly, and look, you can find your own translation, but this translation is freely available online. I took it from, I'll tell you what the site was, genius.com, and this is the translated by Stephanie Daly, Atrahasis Epic, annotated. Okay, these are freely available online, all of them. and other ones that we've shared in the past are also freely available. Now, this is how it starts, and it's not complete, so it's fragmented as well, and so it's not all the tablets made it through this through time, 4,500, 5,000 years for a clay tablet. That's pretty good. Now, when the gods instead of men did the work, bore the loads, the gods' load was too great, the work too hard, the trouble too much. The great Anunnaki made the Igigi carry the workload sevenfold. And Anu, their father, was king. The gods had to dig out canals, had to clear channels, the lifelines of the land. The gods dug out the Tigris River and then dug out the Euphrates. They were counting the years of loads. For 3,600 years, they bore the excess. Hard work, night and day. They groaned and blamed each other, grumbled over the masses of excavated soil. Let us confront our Chamberlain and get him to relieve us of our hard work. Come, let us carry the Lord, the counselor of the gods, the warrior from his dwelling. And then there's some fragmented. Then someone made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. And then there's a piece missing. The gods listened to his speech, set fire to their tools, put aside their spades for fire, their loads for the fire god. They flared up. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. The house was surrounded. The god had not realized. When they reached the gate of warrior Elil's dwelling, it was night, the middle watch. Ekur was surrounded. Elil had not realized. And there's something missing again, Dave?
Yeah. My lord, your house is surrounded. A rabble is running around your door. Elil, your house is surrounded. A piece missing. Nusku barred his door, took up his weapons, and stood in front of Elil. Nusku made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Oh, my lord, your face is sallow with tamarisk. Why do you fear your own your sons? A piece missing. Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the great gods. It is against me that they have risen. Shall I do battle? What did I see with my own eyes? A rabble was running around my door. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the warrior Elil. Let Nusku go out and find out the words of the Igigi, who have surrounded your door. A piece missing. Elil made his voice heard and spoke to the vizier Nusku. Nusku, open your door, take up your weapons, and stand before me. Another piece missing. Nusku opened his door, took up his weapons, went before Elil in the assembly of all the gods. He bowed, then stood and told the message. Meki?
Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Elil, your chamberlain Ninurta, and your canal controller Inugi have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rebel? Who is in charge of the fighting? Who declared war? Who ran to the door of Elil? Elil, and there's a piece missing. Every single one of us declared war. We have put a stop to the digging. The load is excessive. It is killing us. Our work is too hard, the trouble too much. So every single one of us gods has agreed to complain to Elil. Nusku took his weapons, went and returned to Elil. And there's a piece missing again. Elil listened to their speech. His tears flowed. Elil spoke guardedly, addressed the warrior Anu. Noble one, take a decree with you to the sky. Show your strength while the Anunnaki are sitting before you. Call up one god and let them cast him for destruction. Anu made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. What are we complaining of? Their work was indeed too hard. Their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. And there's a whole bunch missing. While the Anunnaki are sitting before you, and while Belet Ili, the womb goddess, is present, call up one and cast him for destruction. Again, he's missing. Your father Anu, your counselor warrior Eliel, have sent me to say, who is in charge of the rebel? Who is in charge of the fighting? Which god started the war? A rebel was running around Eliel's door. Dave?
Ea made his voice heard and spoke to the gods, his brothers. Why are we blaming them? Their work was too hard, their trouble was too much. Every day the earth resounded. The warning signal was loud enough. We kept hearing the noise. There is, and there's a piece missing. Belit Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let her create a mortal man, so that he may bear the yoke, the work of Ilil. Let man bear the load of the gods. There's a piece missing. Belit Ili, the womb goddess, is present. Let the womb goddess create offspring, and let them bear the load of the gods. They called up the goddess, asked the midwife of the gods, wise Mami. You are the womb goddess, to be the creator of mankind. Create a mortal that he may bear the yoke. Let him bear the yoke, the work of Elil. Let him bear the load of the gods. Nintu made her voice heard and spoke to the great gods. Meki.
On the 1st, 7th, and 15th of the month, I shall make a purification by washing. Then one god should be slaughtered, and the gods can be purified by immersion. Nintu shall mix the clay with his flesh and blood. Then a god and a man will be mixed together in clay. Let us hear the drumbeat forever after. Let a ghost come into existence from the god's flesh. Let her proclaim it as her living sign, and let the ghost exit so as not to forget the slain god. They answered yes in the assembly. The great Anunnaki who assigned the fates. And this is missing. I've carried out perfectly the work that you ordered of me. You have slaughtered a god together with his intelligence. I've relieved you of your hard work. I've imposed your load on man. You have bestowed noise on man. You have bestowed noise on mankind. I've undone the fetter and granted freedom. They listened to the speech of hers and were freed from anxiety and kissed her feet. We used to call you Mami, but now your name shall be Mistress of all gods. Far-sighted Enki and wise Mami went into the room of fate. The womb goddesses were assembled. Now listen very carefully what I'm reading out here now, everybody. The womb goddesses were assembled. He trod the clay in her presence. She kept reciting an incantation. For Enki, staying in her presence made her recite it. When she had finished her incantation, she pinched off 14 pieces of clay and set 7 pieces on the right, 7 on the left. Between them she put down a mud brick. She made use of a reed, opened it to cut the umbilical cord, called up the wise and knowledgeable womb goddesses, 7 and 7. 7 created males, 7 created females. For the womb goddess is creator of fate. He, missing, them 2 by 2, missing again, them 2 by 2 in their presence. Dave?
Mami made these rules for people. In the house of a woman who is giving birth, the mud brick shall be put down for 7 days. Belit Ili, wise Mami, shall be honoured. The midwife shall rejoice in the house of the woman who gives birth. And when the woman gives birth to the baby, the mother of the baby shall sever herself, a man to a girl. There's a piece missing. Her bosom. A beard can be seen on a young man's cheek in gardens and waysides. A wife and a husband choose each other. The womb goddesses were assembled, and Nintu was present. They counted the months, called up the 10th month as the term of fates. When the 10th month came, she slipped in a staff and opened the womb. Her face was glad and joyful. She covered her head, performed the midwifery, put on her belt, said a blessing. She made a drawing in flour and put down a mud brick. Meki.
Again, a chunk missing. 600 years, less than 600 years passed, and the country was as noisy as a bellowing bull. The god grew restless at their racket. Elil rather, had to listen to their noise. He addressed the great gods. The noise of mankind has become too much. I am losing sleep over their racket. Give the order that Surupu disease shall break out. Now I looked Surupu up. Surupu means frost or cold. So I wonder if this is a reference to the common cold or the flu or something. There's a piece missing.
Or was it the Ice Age?
No, it's a disease that the people have.
Okay.
Definitely. So, but again, could be related to an Ice Age as well. Now, there was one Atrahasis whose ear was open to his god Enki. He would speak with his god, and his god would speak with him. Atrahasis made his voice heard and spoke to his lord. How long will the gods make us suffer? Will they make us suffer illness forever? Enki made his voice heard and spoke to his servant. Can the elders, the senior men, start an uprising in your own house? Let the heralds proclaim. Let them make a loud noise in the land. Do not revere your gods. Do not pray to your goddesses, but search out the dwarf Namtara. Bring a baked loaf into his presence. May he be shamed by the presence, and wipe away his hand. Dave?
There's a piece missing. The elders listened to his speech. They built a temple for Namtara in the city. Heralds proclaimed. There's a piece missing. They made a loud noise in the land. They did not revere their god. They did not pray to their goddess, but searched out the door of Namtara, brought a baked loaf into his presence. The flour offerings reached him, and he was shamed by the presence, and wiped away his hand. And the Sapuru disease left them. The gods went back to their regular offerings.
And if you look at this text with modern eyes, the womb goddesses, they were opened, they were assembled.
Mm-hmm.
Are these in fact artificial wombs?
Which, are they machines? Yeah.
Yeah, that would, from which the babies would be harvested. So you put the fetus or the impregnated cells in there,
mm-hmm.
and then the womb goddess, the machine, the artificial womb breeds them, gets them to term, and then after in the 10th month, they said, right, which is women carry to term in 9 months.
That's right.
So the 10th month the child is born, and they open it. And they created 7 men, 7 women. They set down rules for them to live by, and then it turns out the gods, they must have really multiplied, I guess, because the noise became too much,
mm-hmm.
and the gods tried to be upset, and it gave them a disease, I guess, to shut them up a little bit. But what is more interesting is how it's all described. I mean, initially the Igigi, which are also gods, so they're the brothers mm-hmm. of the Anunnaki, they're doing all the hard work, and this is the first reported labor strike that I know of. But they said, we're not going to do it anymore. It's just too hot. We've worked for 3,600 years digging out these rivers, and we can't do it anymore. And then the gods, the Anunnaki, say, I'm so sorry. We should have realized this earlier. We have given you too much to do. Clearly. And they were crying over it. It touched them. And they decided, you know what? We'll create a slave race that will do the work. And the slave race will be created using our material, like our DNA,
mm-hmm.
as well as the DNA that's native to this planet. Because the funny thing is that they mixed the god and clay.
That's right.
Now, funnily enough, whenever there's the daughters of men or the daughters of the earth, whenever there's like this reference in ancient times to something like that, I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but Hercules was fighting one of the people that he was fighting. His mother was Gaia, and Hercules couldn't defeat him because every time he was thrown to the ground, the earth would revive him. It would give him strength. And there's reference here to the titans of being, or or the old elder gods of being half from somewhere else and half Terran stock. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
It's a common theme in the Bible too, and when the Watchers, or when the sons of God saw the women of Earth, they went to them, and there was a mixture again between the Earth and someone else potentially, right? Or another race. And here we see very clearly that the genetic material of the gods, as they were called, and people was used to create this race. And I believe very firmly, and this is going to give me a lot of hate maybe, but I believe the original inhabitants of this planet are what we would call the Bigfoot, the Yeti, and Alma, Sasquatch, all those. Right? They're the actual people of the planet, if you will. And we are not the first race, right, by a long shot, but we are the result of this. So what we just spoke about is before the flood, right? So this was created before the flood. The giants, etc. The heroes of old, half human and half something else potentially. Or when I say human, I mean half Sasquatch, half Yeti. So from this like earth stock, right, surface earth stock, and the other half something else. And after the flood, another race was created. After that race had been mostly destroyed, clearly not destroyed completely, right, but mostly destroyed, and the original people were, I guess, gone into hiding. The Sasquatch, Alma, Yeti, etc. Funnily enough, Gilgamesh, his friend, was also a wild man. But I wonder if he was of the same family as Sasquatch and Yeti, etc. So that's Gilgamesh's friend. In fact, it was his friend that, or his illness rather, right, that prompted Gilgamesh to go and seek out his mother, to seek immortality, and his name was Enkidu. Okay, as he's the friend of Gilgamesh. His name is Enkidu, and he was meant to be again this wild man, right? And I believe he was again this Yeti, and it's really interesting how it all comes together in one complete story. If you're willing to look at the connections, and I also believe that, and as we have known now, that the human race was a lot more diverse many thousands of years ago than it is today, much more diverse, and we probably were cohabiting the planet with many different versions of Homo sapiens, even, right? But it's this slave race that interests me the most, right? That was created specifically to work to the will of God, and it's really funny. I don't know if you feel the same way, but most people feel really, really good when they've done a hard day's work. Like if you've worked hard, and you eat well enough, and you've got a good home. But if you did hard physical labor, there's nothing quite as satisfying as that. I'm going to propose you, Dave. Would you agree? That's probably a true statement.
I think it's a true statement. But the thing I wanted to point out was the word mortal in there.
Go.
No.
Yes. Oh yes. Mortal man.
Mortal man. There you go.
Right.
Meaning people, humans. Hey, that's the end of the show. Can you believe it? Can't. It's hard, difficult to comprehend. That's the end of show number 497. This is Dave and Meki's Shiny Side Out. And do you know what? Just be you. Hopefully it's a nice you. And be nice to others. That's all I'm going to say this week. We'll see you next week. And stay tuned for Jer Bear's After Hours program. It's awesome.